promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, Accra, Banjul and Monrovia, 1 o'clock in Lagos, Cotonou and Niamey. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio Broadcasting on 94.9 FM worldwide on wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Ghanaian government begins investigation surrounding the death of key officials in helicopter crash.
And I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have both been retrieved.
Ivorian opposition politician Tijan Cham urges dialogue to prevent reviewing a recent past as October election approaches. Thousands of Liberian protesters petitioned the state authority to end escalating drug crisis.
Akim Oya with the mindset that we will do part to some of the ghettos that we know about, that the governor will hear that ourselves are breaking down some of those ghettos.
Right now, the state that we are in a state of emergency. So the fight has to begin with the government.
And Chair of ECOWAS Authorities President Mada Bio visits Togo amid regional strains. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko and thank you for joining our broadcast. We begin in Ghana where the government is investigating the circumstances surrounding a military helicopter crash that resulted in the deaths of 8 people, including 2 cabinet ministers and other officials. In his address to the nation on Thursday night regarding the situation, President Mahama reassured families of the victims and the public that the Ghana Armed Forces is conducting a transparent investigation into the incident. The military helicopter crash occurred on Wednesday, August 6, 2025, while en route to Obuasi in the Asante region for a specific assignment. 8 people were on board, including the Minister of Defense, Dr. Edward Oman Boama, the Minister of Environment, Science and Technology, Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, as well as 3 crew members from the Ghana Armed Forces, among others. WADR's Nadidi Tete in Accra reports that the helicopter lost radar contact shortly after the takeoff.
President John Dramani Mahama has assured Ghanaians of a full-scale transparent investigation into the military helicopter crash that killed 8 people on board, including state officials and military personnel. The crash occurred at the Adansi Ekrofum districts of the Ashanti region. In his address on Thursday, President Mahama described the tragedy as a devastating blow not only to the state, but to him personally.
This tragedy represents a deep personal loss for me. I shared a close bond with many of those individuals who died. Our nation is grieving, and on behalf of the government and the people of Ghana, I extend my deepest condolences to their families, friends, and their loved ones. Know that our entire country mourns with you.
President Mahama disclosed that both the flight data and cockpit voice recorders had been recovered and that the Ghana Armed Forces had launched a comprehensive investigation to determine the cause of the incident.
And as we mourn, questions about the cause of this tragedy are only natural and important. And I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash.
All 8 bodies have been retrieved and samples of the remains have been flown to South Africa for DNA confirmation to aid identification. The president called for unity in this time of grief.
Let us set aside our differences and offer our collective compassion to the bereaved families.
As part of a week-long program of national mourning, a state funeral will be held at the Black Star Square on Friday, August 15, in memory of the deceased personalities. On Saturday, August 9, the forecourts of the State House will host an evening of reflections and a memorial, while books of condolences will be opened from August 10 to 14 at the Ministries of Defense, Environment and Foreign Affairs, the Ghana Armed Forces and NADMO, as well as the headquarters of the National Democratic Congress. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Côte d'Ivoire, the leader of the opposition PDCI party has emphasized the need for dialogue in the country ahead of the October presidential election. Tijan Cham made the call during a video broadcast via his social media accounts in commemoration of the country's 65th independence anniversary. He denounced the wave of arrests, intimidation and suppression of political and civil rights activists by the current regime. Cham's message on Thursday evening came nearly 24 hours after incumbent Alassane Ouattara addressed the nation on the occasion of Côte d'Ivoire's Independence Day. President Ouattara, in his speech, highlighted some of his government's achievements, including a thriving economy and social security, as he solicited support for his fourth-term candidacy. In response to the speech, Tijan Cham warns of dangerous path the ruling RHDP party's decision leads the country and threatens regional peace.
À moins de 3 mois d'une élection décisive pour l'avenir de notre pays.
Less than 3 months before an election that will be decisive for the future of our country, it is the House of Côte d'Ivoire that is threatened and potentially the sub-region if we do not stop the infernal machine of exclusion, arrests, intimidation and withdrawal into identity. Felix Boigny made our beautiful country the land of dialogue. He succeeded through patience, intelligence, tenacity, and also one of his greatest qualities, his precious humility in ensuring that this word, dialogue, was almost automatically associated with our country throughout his period in power. Dialogue and peace, words blessed above all others, whether for international issues as complex as the Middle East conflict or even some of our internal difficulties. It is not too late to prevent our country from reliving a recent past that all Ivorians want to forget. The PDCI, with my voice aside, is committed to continuing always to working for peace, for dialogue, to build a Côte d'Ivoire faithful to the original vision of President Felix Boigny. I remain optimistic, convinced as I am that the best days of our country are yet to come, with a president elected during an inclusive, honest, transparent election organized in true peace for united, feasible, tolerant and fraternal Côte d'Ivoire.
Paisible, tolérante et fraternelle.
PDCI party leader Tijan Cham speaking there. Elsewhere in Liberia, thousands of citizens converge on Monrovia to protest alarming rise of drugs and substance abuse across the country. The demonstration held under the banner "Say No to Drugs" brought together people from all walks of life with the shared goal of petitioning the current government over its 2023 election campaign promise to tackle the drug crisis. President Joseph Boakai, during his first State of the Nation address, declared drug abuse a public health emergency and established a task force to address the issue. As WDR's Abraham Parker reports, the protesters decry the ineffectiveness of the anti-drugs campaign.
Representing a coalition on the banner "Say No to Drugs" were members of civil society, private institutions, government officials, and citizens. In a petition read by Anthony Nimlin, one of the protesters, the campaigners called on the government to institute measures to end the drug epidemic and protect the youth.
We see parents bury their children as a result of drugs overdose and cry every day as their children roam the streets, begging and stealing just to feed an addiction they cannot control. This has become the new normal in Liberia. Battling and overcoming addiction is one of the most difficult things to do.
A strong critic of the Boakai government, Representative Safoko of District 9, Moserado County, criticized the government for politicizing the societal problem.
The president told the Liberian people that any government official who was going to be appointed was going to do his or her job test. So that was another mockery. Then I saw that the government did not have a systematic approach towards drugs.
In response, Representative Prince Toss, committee chairman on claims and petition at the House of Representatives, assured the protesters of the legislature's commitment to address the crisis. It should be recalled that under the immediate past administration of George Weah, the Controlled Drug and Substance Act of 2023 was enacted, making drug offenses non-bailable. Despite these efforts, drug abuse, particularly of crude, remains a public concern in Liberia, resulting in several deaths and an increased rate of mental illness. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The United States is urging stronger security cooperation between the Sahel Alliance and ECOWAS despite ongoing tensions. So Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger break away from the regional bloc. Speaking at the UN Security Council on Thursday, August 7, U.S. Ambassador Dorothy Sir called on Sahelian and coastal states to put aside their differences and unite in the fight against terrorism while respecting human rights and the rule of law. Sir strongly condemned recent attacks by extremist groups like Jenim, the Islamic State in the Sahel, Boko Haram and others, warning of growing instability across the region. Though political divides remain, both ECOWAS and the Sahel Alliance have begun negotiations to redefine their relationship with talks already underway in Bamako and Freetown. The U.S. also praised the UN's role in mediating these efforts while raising concerns about the impact of Sudan's civil war on regional security, including porous borders and the spread of illegal arms. An urgent call has been made for immediate ceasefire in Sudan to help prevent further destabilization across West Africa. Here in Senegal, the former ruling party, the Alliance for Republic, rejected the economic recovery plan. In a press interview yesterday, the main opposition party said the plan was leading the country toward a total impoverishment. More details with Christopher Atichu.
For the Alliance for the Republic, the economic recovery plan presented by the Prime Minister is formally illegal. Ajamam Gay Job is the deputy spokesperson for the main opposition party.
It is so, first of all, by establishing itself as the benchmark for our country in line with and in place of the Socialist Party, a law of the Republic passed by the National Assembly. It is also so because our fundamental law, our constitution in Article 42 clearly and unequivocally states that the President of the Republic determines the nation's policy. However, from the very words of the President of the Republic, the press was conceived by the Prime Minister and his team.
The former ruling party is therefore adamant that this plan opens up bleak prospects for the country.
Unable to provide the IMF with the evidence of the unfounded accusations regarding the falsification of public accounts, the government is launching a plan that follows a disastrous logic of eliminating subsidies and exemptions while brutally broadening the tax base. It opens up bleak prospects for the population, businesses, and the informal sector. Such measures undoubtedly mean a general increase in the prices of transport and telephone services, as all taxes and charges will be borne by the user or end consumer.
As a reminder, this economic recovery plan presented by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko on August 1 is financed to a tune of over 5 trillion CFA francs. The plan's execution hopes on 90% of financing being internally generated without debt, thanks to Senegal's resources.
Christopher, I teach you with that report. Meanwhile, with some 5,000 kilometers away from Senegal, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko continues his engagement in Turkey this Friday. The Senegalese head of government met with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Thursday. Ankara and Dakar intend to strengthen their cooperation. Several agreements have been signed. Francis Boniface has the update in this report.
Discussions between Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko and President Recep Tayyip focused primarily on strengthening the Dakar-Ankara axis. Key areas of cooperation such as investment, trade, counter-terrorism, energy, transportation, agriculture and fisheries were examined in detail. The two men subsequently resolved to strengthen them through the creation of a high-level strategic cooperation council. Ousmane Sonko, Senegalese Prime Minister.
This mission is important for us. But what I remember is that it was more important because of what we said to each other behind closed doors, outside of any protocol, between the big brother that you are, who has always fascinated us, inspired us for the fight that you have led, but especially for the results that you have obtained. The leadership of your country, the profound reforms that you have successfully initiated, and the concrete benefits that this has been able to bring to the Turkish people. I am delighted by your wish. I was going to say even your decision to raise our trade to the mark of $1 billion, that is to say, to multiply it by almost a little more than 3. This is appreciable and it donates an ambition and a will to which we will respond. Because I said it at the beginning of my remarks this morning, we have not yet explored the full potential of the relationship between our two countries. And in all the sectors you mentioned earlier, agriculture, the energy sector, the transport sector, in what we are trying to do within the framework of Vision 2050, Turkey has its place alongside us as investors, as strategic and institutional partners.
On the security front, an additional protocol on military and financial cooperation was signed between the defense ministers of Senegal and Turkey. This agreement aims to strengthen ties between the two countries amid a difficult security situation in the West African region. On the economic front, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has expressed his desire to increase trade volumes to $1 billion, noting that nearly 100 Turkish companies are active in Senegal. The Senegalese head of government also announced his participation in the Turkey-Senegal Economic Forum this Saturday and will also meet with the Senegalese diaspora in Turkey the same day.
Francis Boniface with that report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. A Ghanaian government begins investigation surrounding the death of key officials in helicopter crash. Ivorian opposition politician Tijan Cham urges dialogue to prevent the raving a recent past as October election approaches. Thousands of Liberian protesters petitioned the state authority to end escalating drug crisis. Still ahead in the news, Chair of ECOWAS authorities, President Mada Bio, visits Togo amid regional strains. We also have guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio is in Lomé this Friday, August 8, for an important diplomatic visit to Togo. Our current chair of ECOWAS authorities of heads of states, the President Bio's trip comes at a critical moment, with tensions still simmering between the regional bloc and the military-led governments in the Sahel. Invited by Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé, a key voice in West Africa's mediation efforts, Bio is expected to push for a more dialogue-driven approach to resolving the crisis. The visit also aims to boost the bilateral ties between Freetown and Lomé and reinforce efforts to maintain unity across the ECOWAS region. Augustine Coley has more in this report.
Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio, currently serving as chairman of ECOWAS, is on a working visit to Togo this Friday, August 8, following an invitation from Faure Gnassingbé, President of the Council of Ministers in Togo. The visit comes at a time of heightened political tension in West Africa, particularly between ECOWAS and military-led governments in the Sahel region that have exited the regional bloc. President Gnassingbé has stood out for his opposition to ECOWAS-imposed sanctions on these transitional regimes. Alongside Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, Gnassingbé was tasked with leading dialogue efforts with the Alliance of Sahel States. However, these talks have so far failed to bring the breakaway nations back into the ECOWAS fold. Earlier this month, President Maada Bio met with the ECOWAS Commission President in Freetown, where he advocated for a more diplomatic and less confrontational approach to managing regional tensions, emphasizing negotiated solutions over punitive measures. The upcoming talks in Lomé aim to strengthen relations between Sierra Leone and Togo, and part of broader West African efforts to restore cohesion within ECOWAS and encourage political reconciliation across the region.
Augustine Coley filed that report. Still in Togo, food sovereignty is at the heart of an international forum in Lomé. It takes place from August 6 to 10 and brings together mainly young Africans. The objective is to create a framework for strategic and inclusive reflection around the theme of food sovereignty in Africa. This is the first edition of the International Youth Forum on Food Sovereignty, organized by the Food and Local Development Organizations. The forum agenda includes panels and roundtable discussions with themes that explore the major challenges of sustainable food with a particular focus on the essential role of women and youth in this area.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In our guest interview, Ghana, where the government is investigating circumstances surrounding a military helicopter crash that resulted in the death of 8 people, including 2 cabinet ministers and other officials. So far, it has been reported that the helicopter lost radar contacts shortly after takeoff. In his address to the nation on Thursday night regarding the situation, President Mahama reassured families of the victims and the public that the Ghana Armed Forces is conducting a transparent investigation into the incident. Our guest is Dr. Dominic Ando, lead consultant at the Aviation Ghana.
When it comes to civilian crash investigations, in Ghana, we have the Civil Aviation Authority, just like we have in Senegal. And then we also have another agency called the Aircraft Accident and Incident Investigation Bureau. So the Aircraft Accident and Incident Investigation Bureau, short form is AIB. They are responsible for investigating all civilian aircraft when they are involved in accidents or incidents. When it comes to the military, because it's military-oriented, in this instance where the helicopter crashed, they have their own ANS services, they have their own air traffic controllers, etc. So it's the military high command that will set up a committee made up of the Chief of Air Staff, Chief of Defense Staff, and some other experts to look into what actually caused the crash. If the government also wants a very open and transparent process, government will also suggest that, look, add this retired officer to the investigations because they think that he will bring a fresh perspective to bear, and because it's not an active service, is free to express his opinion. They may recommend some of those to be added as well. But it will not take the form of the civilian investigations that AIB will do. But the military will set up the committee and government will recommend 1 or 2 people to be added to the committee.
How important is the recovery and analysis of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder in determining the cause of such crashes?
When it comes to helicopters, because there are a lot of risk factors, weather being one, thunderstorms and rains being the other, and the August weather in Ghana generally is very cloudy and cold and drizzles a lot. So August temperatures in Ghana is about 23 degrees Celsius. It's the coolest weather month in Ghana. So the weather itself generally is always cloudy and etc. in August. So the first risk that may have causes that we talk about is the weather. However, the flight data recorder, the black box as we call it, will help us understand if indeed they had mechanical issues on board, or if it was the weather, or was a discussion ongoing between the crew just before the crash happened, and probably if they had issues along the way, the flight data recorder will point to all that. If there was some malfunctioning on the equipment, the aircraft, the helicopter, it will record that. If the pilot was saying, I have this issue, for which reason I need to land, and I was looking for a place to land, it will record that. Bear in mind that the accident happened in the forest, and around that side, it was very difficult to say you are navigating the forest and find a place to land. So if all the issues taken into consideration, the flight data recorder will let us understand better what actually transpired on the aircraft.
Sir, you've just mentioned weather condition being a factor, but what role do other factors like maintenance history, pilot training typically play in similar military helicopter accidents?
Well, you see, the major issue when it has to do with helicopters has to do with weather. Yes, maintenance is part, training is part, because when it comes to maintenance, from the Air Force base, if the equipment, the helicopter, is not fit to fly, the engineer will never certify it to take off. Once the engineer certifies that it's fit to take off, then it's down to the pilots, the crew, to do a pre-flight weather assessment to determine whether they will go or not. And the weather is very important because, see, helicopters don't fly very high, about 1,000 feet. They don't go very high like the jets that we have, who go into the clouds and can land. They have a lot of navigational tools and even autopilot. But helicopters about 1,000 feet, so they need a clear vision. This particular helicopter, Chinese Z9, if you are flying very low, very, very low, it requires a minimum visual threshold. As in, you have to see VFR of about 5,000 meters if you are flying very low, 5,000 meters, just so that you can see ahead 5,000 meters. So if there are obstacles, you try to avoid them. However, if it's clear skies, the sun is bright, there are no clouds, nothing, and you are flying even high, the threshold is about 800 meters. See in front of you, 800 meters, essentially. And secondly, because we were flying over a forest area, the moisture created in those areas also can impact the performance of the helicopter. That's also another issue. The little cloudy, foggy nature of the weather is always an issue for when it comes to helicopters.
Finally, sir, before I let you go, given the involvement of high-ranking officials, how can investigators ensure the transparency and impartiality of the investigation process as promised by President Mahama?
Because there are lots of people involved. The presidency has taken an interest. So not just be the military command just investigating without any proper oversight. The government will ensure that all the other relevant people, professionals, are also brought on board. So it wouldn't be like military is doing it and covering up anything, but to ensure that investigations are transparent. And then we learn from it to be able to have closure on this one and learn from it for future endeavors.
Dr. Dominic Ando, lead consultant at Aviation Ghana. Aviation Ghana there. Well, in sports, my colleague Augustine Colley is in the studio with me for some details. We are beginning with, of course, the Chan African Nations Championship. There are some games today, Augustine.
Certainly, you are right, Sankuli. So it's a first-time showdown this Friday as Guinea takes on Uganda in Group C of the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship, which is also termed as Chan, right in Kampala. Also, South Africa kicks off their Group C campaign against Algeria this Friday. Yeah. But taking you out of the continent, 3 African stars have taken the global stage by storm this season. Egypt's Mohamed Salah, Morocco's Achraf Hakimi, and Guinea's Sekou Guirassy have all earned international praise for their outstanding performances during the 2024-2025 football campaign. And this is from top European leagues to major international competitions. These players have consistently delivered world-class displays according to the statistics.
According to the statistics, but there's an interesting conversation surrounding the Ballon d'Or. Of course, Lamine Yamal, Ousmane Dembele of France and Paris Saint-Germain, and Rafinha of Brazil and Barcelona are the top contenders, but some are of the view that Achraf Hakimi of Morocco should be in that contention simply because he plays with Ousmane Dembele in the same Paris Saint-Germain team.
The French
League won. The French League won, which they've won. They've won the UEFA Champions League together, and some are of the view from the knockout stages. In fact, Hakimi was more instrumental to the Paris team than Ousmane Dembele.
In terms of his contribution
to exactly to goals, his assists,
defensive.
And he even scored in the final against Inter Milan.
Yeah.
So some of the view that people should be talking about him the same way they're talking about Ousmane Dembele.
Yeah, from the angle of Africa, you are right. But
not necessarily from the angle of Africa, but from the stats.
It's contribution, right?
Yes, from the stats. Because if he has done more than Ousmane Dembele in terms of stats from the knockout stages to winning the Champions League, why not talk about him like you're talking about Ousmane Dembele?
I could agree with you on another side, but again, let's remember Mohamed Salah, who comes from Liverpool, who has done pretty well not only last season, he's been consistent.
Yes, he has been consistent.
He even went as far as reaching the 3rd place along with Senegalese Sadio Mane and previous years. So he's consistent. Why wouldn't people look at that? But are we looking at just a single season performance?
No, of course, this is a single season performance. The reason why so many people are not talking so much about Mo Salah, which he's done extremely well, mind you, he's the English Premier League Player of the Year, he's won the Golden Boot, but the contention here is UEFA Champions League, which Ousmane Dembele and Achraf Hakimi have won.
To
this well normally that's the key. That's really key. Well, Augustine Colley with sport. Thank you very much there, Augustine Colley, for the sport news. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilou So and Sehnjai for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live at WADR.org. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.